Good morning. The day and date is Monday, 13 October 2025. It's a Monday, the 13th, not a Friday the 13th, but the 13th tends to be a fairly active hacking day for any month, but especially for cases where 13th is a Friday. That's just a standard thing. And in our next module, we'll be um, discussing some concepts and methods associated with Friday the 13th exploits because they are so commonplace. But that said, there is some benefit from learning about hacker culture. And it's also good to know both sides of the forensic process. You have an offensive and a defensive side. This morning's segment, we're going to call our final review, module one final review, right? So finer points and final review. That'll be the heading of the YouTube video. And here's a question for you out of our lecture notes. So we're going to update our lecture notes one more time. First of all, I'm hoping that one of you is connected to Buck's Wi-Fi. Do we have anyone that's connected to Buck's Wi-Fi at this time?
I am.
Okay. So so here's an example of what we put. Well, let's do this. Let's take advantage of your connection right now. Can we do that? I'm going to stop sharing. Can you share your screen? Are you on your laptop?
Yeah.
Good, good. Can I get you to open a command prompt in administrator mode?
Okay. Are you saying?
Yes, I am seeing. Well, and I'm glad you're modifying the font size. So let's go ahead and just issue an ipconfig space /all. And if you were doing another day of work in a network forensic laboratory, what would you do before you would start network forensic activities in a recommended or best practices mode? What are some things you would do before you actually executed the nmap command? Let's just say it's another day on the job. And this is something I'm posing not to Keanu specifically, but anyone who's viewing at this time or taking in the recorded session later on YouTube. Before you just start firing off network forensic tools, what are some of the things you should do before you start using your resources?
Make sure it's up to date.
Make sure it's up to date. It's not complicated, right? make sure it's functioning properly, make sure it's up to date. And if you find a novel result, a peculiar result, a provocative result with, let's say, Nmap running in Kali, um, what would you want to do before you proceeded on the basis of that discovery? And let's say it was provocative enough where some significant changes would have to be made. What is another best practice that we recommend in network forensics, just in terms of operational concepts, right? And that's what Module 1 is about. You know, the standards of conduct for network forensic professionals, their specific habits of preparation, legal interests. You know, I got a really broad landscape in Module 1, but let me rephrase the question. You've captured to a permanent record a provocative result in your first scan using Kali Nmap with a single virtual machine. What would be prudent to do before taking significant action with a client based on that single result?
So I would double check the results,
And
possibly use another machine.
okay, you would double check your results to use another machine. Because when you go to, and that's just sensible, isn't it? I mean, let's say you go to the client and you say, hey, you wanted to wait on this intrusion detection system because of the downtime and the expense. I strongly urge you to reconsider your timeline. If you wait any further, you could be at significant risk. What do you think your client's going to ask? Gennaro, let's pretend that you are that client. Let's role play a bit. Gennaro, we've just discovered something provocative. And here's what it means. And here's the result we have. Here's the proof. We discovered this using Kali, right? And we need you to step up the milestones that we had planned for your computing environment. You had budgeted $25,000 for some enhancements next season. We need you to implement 10,000 of that like tomorrow. Gennaro, what would your natural inclination be? Wouldn't you want to put Keanu to the test? Wouldn't you want to say, oh, okay, are you sure? Wouldn't that be a reasonable response?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. Let's say Gennaro is really ticked off and he says, I don't have $10,000 right now, and it's going to have to wait. Your professional recommendation has just been ignored, but this is an important client, right? So, Keanu, what do you do to protect your own interest and yet remain faithful and loyal to an important client? Given the information that you just received from Gennaro, what would you tell Gennaro? What what additional action or measure would you take to protect your own professional integrity, but then also to demonstrate and document some loyalty and, you know, faithful service to an important client? He's just told
Well,
you, okay, you showed me, and then I didn't believe you, and then you showed me, oh no, this is verifiable. We've used a different computer. See, we've used we've used different methods, different tools, we've different systems. This is a certainty. And he says, I don't have it. I got nothing. I'm not doing it. what would your final what is a final action you could take to preserve the greater good for both parties?
Well, so there's like I discovered content or something that's illegal.
Oh,
That's what you're saying?
you're saying you could share additional artifacts that would compel your client. That's a really good answer. And to the extent that you don't violate privacy standards in the process, that could be a reasonable thing. Don't, if you really care about your client, do you just accept, they don't understand they're going to hurt themselves, right? It's like watching, okay, I'm kind of stretching here, but do any of you have younger siblings like toddlers? Have you ever seen a toddler in a kitchen near a stove and they have a tendency to reach for things, right?
Yeah.
Or they have a tendency to run across the street without looking. And you tell
Yeah.
them, don't run across the street without looking. You can get hurt, right? And they don't understand. So our parental instinct, right? Local, you may not be the parent or guardian of a customer, but this idea of loca parentis, the local patriarch, there's a legal precedent. It's called loca parentis. When you're dealing with adolescents and you're the adult in the room and you were charged with the responsibility of a person, right? And why am I bringing this up? Well, in legal circles, if you're supervising, you're watching somebody's teenager and they're into the dark web, right? Um, there's this concept of loco parentis where you're the adult that's in charge. Do you let that continue to happen? Let's pretend that Gennaro is neither an adolescent or a teenager, and you really respect this client, and you don't want to force the issue by compelling your faithful client. You've been through a lot of ups and downs, right? And you genuinely understand that Gennaro really doesn't have it right now. Could have it, but would probably have to like take out a second mortgage on the house or rob Peter to pay Paul, redivert priority resources to make that happen. What's one final measure that you can take that would preserve the greater good, Keanu? If your hands were tied and you really couldn't, by the way, I really like your answer. I think seeing is believing, and here's a quick side story. You know that I'm very invested in the whole DNS thing, right? I want to stop sharing and I'm going to share another screen, okay? Are you still with me?
Yeah, what's up with you?
Okay, so I'm going to pull up another screen and I got to show you something. And I hope this speaks volumes. A lot of people tend to think that you have to have lots of fancy equipment to be effective. It helps to have it helps to have a lot of resources. I mean, more is better. But sometimes simple but elegant with limitations is actually more politically correct. Okay? Um, can you see? Oh, I gotta admit my demo machine. Are we there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to share this screen. This is my DNS host. You can see this, yeah?
Yeah, we can see it.
Now, I want you to pretend that uh, this is your local DNS, and I'm looking for Amazon. That's Amazon, right? Okay. So this is a bit of a stretch, but what I'd like you to imagine, how's the audio? Is my audio okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
There are times when less is more. That's a popular phrase, but what it means is that sometimes you can overplay a thing, right? Have you ever noticed someone who's new to word processing and they use like 10 different fonts and they use special effects and it's just too much? It's too gaudy, it's too flashy. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
It's like
Oh,
they're showing off their knowledge of skills and abilities with all the features in the word processor. Or maybe it's a web creation tool. And there's all sorts of cool web things. And the website is just too crazy, right? And the color patterns are just too, they're so mingled and muddled that it's hard to read. Have you ever seen a website like that where the information is hard to read? The point I'm trying to make is that you have choices where the media and the message is concerned. And one of the greatest values of DNS is that it reveals some of your exposure without revealing the worst of your exposure. It allows you to present a compelling case to your clients without creating collateral damage for your clients. And here's a quick example. I want you to imagine that in the .com listing with all the A's here, instead of seeing Adobe and instead of seeing things like Amazon and Azure, you see Adult Friend Finder. And this is a work site. So in your professional opinion, should people be engaging Adult Friend Finder in the middle of the workday schedule? What do you think?
nope.
In your professional opinion, could that lead to unnecessary exposures in the computing environment?
Yes, it could.
Oh yeah, especially when you get into pornography, right? If you look down here, instead of Facebook, if if you found a site that said something like F yo mama, right? And it's cute and it's funny and it's hilarious, right? But it's also pornographic. Or you find something like Anaconda, but it has nothing, it's anaconda dot something, but it's not anaconda.com, so it's not about the Anaconda statistical analysis web-based uh, platform. It's not about a programming platform. It's about another kind of anaconda we can't get into. I'm not trying to be indelicate here, but the point is that I'm trying to show you something. If I go into my Facebook prompt here and I want to find out exactly who does my cache on my server provide information about the client that connected to this site? Do you see a reverse IP address? Do you see anything like that?
I see from host. I sort of, is that the host name?
That's a host name out on Facebook.
Oh,
But does that show the host name for the person who browsed to Facebook?
it does not.
It does not. And what value is that? How does that manifest the value of a concept like less is more? I want you to imagine that you're a new technology consultant for an organization and they have really slow internet. And you have DNS running there. And then when you look, you see it populated with not safe for work activity. Okay? Are you with me so far?
Yeah,
And so you send information to the people who hired you, and you share with the people who hired you, hey, you were talking about buying security measures, expensive ones, $10,000 ones, right? I mean, let's just say it's not a few $1,000s, it's more like tens of thousands of dollars by the time you install it and configure it and you have to support it. And the initial purchase is over 10 grand. You're looking at something that costs tens of thousands of dollars in a season, right? And that's a hard pill to swallow, especially for mid-sized and smaller businesses. But you look at this and let's pretend. So I'm going to start sharing now. Let's peel away from there. There are plenty of things you can do on a network switch or on a Wi-Fi network where you can tell how much traffic is coming from certain hosts. And that gives you an idea that, okay, somebody could have a very busy, they could have a device or a system that's going crazy, and it could be going crazy because they're multitasking and they have lots of apps in play, or it could be going crazy for other reasons. Okay? And here's one of the things that you can be sure of. DNS helps you get started and it helps you tweak tweak the conscience and the resolve of the people you serve. If you show them a screen in DNS where they cannot deny they have a problem. True story, 20 years ago, I had a brand new president at a sister campus in the States. And I was a brand new lead for technology. I had just been hired. And a similar situation occurred where they had just decided to pay to double the amount of bandwidth to the campus. Now, the campus was located in 5 separate sites in 4 cities and the local town. So Denmark, South Carolina, and then Charleston, South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, Augusta, Georgia, and well, yeah, the other site was on the other side of the county. Okay, so we had 5 sites altogether, and they had just paid to double the bandwidth, and things were still terribly slow. And I was told to fix it, and I was told we didn't have any more money, and I was told that I had to make sure that this situation would improve. It was one of the first challenges that I faced. And I didn't, 20 years ago, we didn't have a lot of open source network forensic tools, but I had DNS. And I want you to imagine the DNS cache screen that I just showed you. Okay. And I want you to imagine that half of the .com, .net sites were not safe for work sites. Obviously, pornographic sites. Okay. In a live demo in front of the cabinet, the president and his cabinet, I cleared the cache and then I let the campus run for 5 minutes while I explained what that tool did. And then I refreshed the screen and you should have seen the look on everybody's face. audible gasps in the room. Now, the first response was burn the witch. They wanted to get pitchforks and torches, and they wanted a scorched earth campaign. And they said, I want you to open those, I want you to open that DNS cache, and I want you to tell me who's doing it. That's when I smiled. Have you ever heard about hikers that, so I'm gonna put some notes here, right? So I'm just keeping some quick lecture notes here. You know, you've heard of gender reveals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a gender reveal party can be really exciting. But in the same sense, I pulled my own version of a gender reveal party with the cabinet of a sister HBCU, okay? In the States, in the Carolinas, and I did this. And the first thing they wanted to do was start a scorched earth campaign. Now, would you believe that half the people in the room were actually responsible for some of the results on that screen? The very people in the room. See, we're in a social environment. It's a high profile environment. It's a cabinet meeting. That's deadly serious. They're preparing for a board meeting for the Board of Trustees. Yet they can't figure out why everything's moving so slow. Everybody's screen is slow. Nobody's screen is working right. And yet, what's happening in the back of those heads for some of the people in that room is that, oh my gosh, they have a shocked look on their face. But do you think they're shocked because half of the people that are shocked are actually part of the problem? Yeah, that's part of it. That's part of it. You see, everybody puts on a face, right? And when you share things with your clients, what's going to happen is that sometimes you get a shocked look, but in the back of their heads, you don't have a way to view what it is they're thinking. Does everybody understand what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
Can you imagine how relieved some people are when they discovered that you cannot identify the individuals responsible for that not safe for work stuff? You tell them that with the next round of measures, you can slowly cinch down your technology resources, and if needed, you can identify the people who are doing this. But it takes extra legwork. And what else is a best practice? Should you play gotcha in a work environment where you decide to just pick some hapless victim and use them as a sacrificial example? It's effective. You can fire somebody, and then the security guards come and they have empty cardboard boxes and they escort them to their office and they turn over their keys and their ID badge and they're never seen again. And that leaves a lasting impression, but it's a horrible one and it's demoralizing and it affects productivity very, very badly. So hikers, when you're in bear country, especially after they've been hibernating and mama bears give birth to baby cubs and they're out with juvenile bears and they're romping around in the countryside, is it a good idea for you to be silent when you're hiking? What do you think? Do you think it's good to suddenly discover bear cubs and you startle them? Or do you think it's better that hikers carry all sorts of tin cans and noisemakers and they put pebbles and rocks in the tin cans and they tie them to their packs and their gear, and as they're hiking, they make a noisy display of themselves? Which one do you think prevents bear attacks 500%? Is it the silent stealth mode, or is it the, yeah, there's a human in the neighborhood and they smell bad and more, they're making a lot of noise. Which one do you think Mama Bear would appreciate the most when it comes to keeping her cubs safe?
Honestly, depends on the beer. But the noise,
It's the noisy approach. You see, you can use less is more as a principle and work in layers iteratively. And what you want to do is shape the behavior of the people you serve in the computing environment. What I'm sharing with you is a recommended approach because what will happen at first with the shock and dismay is that people want to find out who did it, who done it. But let's face it, if you had a computing environment that was rigged to definitively see whatever people are clicking on and entering in their web browsers, they would have had an employee orientation or employee training session where they would have to learn about those systems. There are things like Ncase that you see my system tray here? True story, we partnered with one of the national laboratories of the United States of America. Now, I'm not going to tell you which one, but when I say the laboratories of the United States of America, I'm talking about Lawrence Livermore Labs, Sandia National Labs, and Los Alamos Labs. This is with the Department of Energy. This is where top secret research occurs, okay? And they had all sorts of security clearances that were required in order for their employees to work in the environment. And they also had something running on each system called Ncase. And Ncase captured every bit, every byte to and from the devices and the computers, every mouse click, every keystroke, every screen view, constantly recorded it in real time for all employees. As a matter of legal precedent, they needed to train their employees to understand this is the environment you're signing into. Out of necessity, this is why we need to. And everybody thought, okay, well, it's top secret stuff. That's why we got to do this. Do you know what the greatest source of employee attrition and loss proved to be for the first 10 years those security systems were put in place? Was it compromises of classified information that were intentional because people were spies? What do you think? What have we been talking about?
they compromise the system, visiting malicious sites.
Yes, they compromised the systems visiting malicious sites, not safe for work sites. And in some cases, they did things like, hey, I was at lunch in the cafeteria. I left my door open to my office by accident. That wasn't me. That had to be somebody else. Really? How was that somebody else? Don't you lock your screen? I mean, don't you do Control Alt Delete and lock the screen so somebody has to use your password? So let me see if I have this right. You work in a top secret environment. The nation's interests are at stake, right? National interests are in play. You go for work, you leave your office door open. Oh, but you leave your computer screen logged in and unattended for a 90-minute lunch break. Oh, did we mention? Here's the video cameras. You were in the cafeteria for 5 minutes picking up a sub. Then what did you do? Oh, you went back to your office and you closed the door. Would you care to like level with us about what you were doing during your lunch break? Dude, miss, wasn't just guys, right? True story, right? There is such a thing as having an environment that's too well rigged. And this is a finer point of this discipline. You can create so much harm and shock and awe and collateral damage. You're a disservice to your customers, but you also paint yourself into a corner as a professional. You're so good, you're too good, and nobody wants you on their system. Nobody wants you to touch their stuff. Nobody wants you to have a look. So what do you think happened when I went back and they said, we want to find, here are the torches, here are the pitchforks, we have to burn the witch. I told them about legal precedent. I said, Houston, we have a problem. In our new employee orientation or in ongoing professional development for current employees, do you have now or have you ever had training about not safe for work conduct on your systems? Do you have now or have you ever had banner notifications that state your data, your activity is subject to review? Does anybody know what I mean about banners? Login banners? They're like mandatory banners you have to click through to log in. And there's a notice that says, have you ever seen that?
I used to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, in computer labs. Have you been to UVI and logged into a library system or a classroom system or a office system or a computer lab system? You see one for the notification screen before you can log in proper. But then new employee orientation, there's a segment just about this, what's appropriate for work in terms of personal behavior. The truth is that we claim to be multitasking, multifaceted individuals in our professional conduct, but the truth is that our personal lives and our professional lives often blur, and we do mix business with pleasure. That's human nature, and that's a problem. It's a challenge. And if we're not careful with our conduct as a really good network, a really sharp network, a really skilled, highly skilled network forensic professional, we can do more damage than good if we're not careful about how we stage and how we advise our clients. Crawl, walk, run. Lead your sheep with a crook and a staff if you have to, but you don't whip the sheep. You've never seen a shepherd with a bullwhip, have you?
No.
I want you to understand why I'm so vested with DNS. I shaped the technology program and the progress and the professional habits of 1,000 stakeholders, students, faculty, and staff, with simple cues that help them understand, holy buckets, I have to change my habits. Holy buckets, do they know what I'm doing? And then we had orientation sessions, training sessions, awareness sessions. We reported routinely about the progress that was made. In 1 week's time, half of the bandwidth of the new internet service, half of the bandwidth of that new internet service was clogged and choked with pornography and gambling sites and, dating social network sites. And, what are you doing watching movies? Why are you streaming Netflix on the job for 3 hours? Really? I mean, I'm a fan of, such and such series, right? As much as the next guy. But really, what's going on with your productivity while you're watching movies for half the afternoon in that's the kind of power that's invested or embedded in just the technology team, never mind the network forensics folks. So, why do I want you to start with a plain Jane resource in your own local computing environment? I want you to become aware of the traffic patterns in your own neighborhood. And then I want you to have like a gender reveal party, but I want you to do this with the best interest of the people you serve and you share that resource with. In a tactful way, I want you to, and now at this point, the only thing that's using your local DNS service are the hosts and devices you have intentionally configured to point to that DNS service. Is that not a correct statement?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so if we look at ipconfig/all, and I walk around in your local computing environment, I'm showing that I have my laptops and my devices pointed at this DNS service. But if I look at everything else in the connected environment, for the sake of the people who I share my computing environment with, I haven't changed the settings on their devices. I haven't changed the setting on the DHCP to automatically assign this. But you can show and share some examples, and you can sway people in a especially in a work environment, right? You can you can basically run some simple tests where you get on TikTok, and TikTok gets pretty spicy very quickly, right? And the thing is, when that occurs, there are other links, there are other jump points and links that are embedded in those TikTok views that somebody's hoping the users in your environment will engage. So I wanted to provide some finer points about just how we operate. And I wanted you to understand how valuable local DNS service really is. And I wanted you to understand the intent. It's not to play gotcha. It's to prevent the needless loss of integrity and business productivity. And it really works. And it costs nothing compared to the tens of thousands other vendors want you to invest in really expensive network security equipment. And you get a chance to control the narrative so you can be a good shepherd. A good shepherd knows, good shepherds know their sheep. And you have to collect, you have to observe, you have to watch the data. And then you do the operational equivalent of rattling noisy objects in a tin can to alert the bears so that they change where they're walking, and where they're juveniles, where they're less than adult constituents are operating, right? Some of our users are more like bear cubs. And what you don't want to do is experience an early professional death because you've startled the mama bear that protects the vulnerable baby cub, right? Office politics is a big thing. We could have an entire course on cybersecurity office politics, and I think that would be a fascinating study. Now, in the interest of time, we need to bring our review to a close, but I want to assure you that the extra measures I'm insisting that you practice as a routine, there's profound value once you get into the real world with it. It's just harder. It's harder to see that. I mean, it's harder to understand how that happens. Now, one thing you're going to want to watch for, what do you do if somebody says, okay, we still have some people that are doing not safe for work things, and we're still losing half of our bandwidth here? What are some obvious things you can watch for that would identify some problem devices or hosts? Now, they could be infected hosts, they could be compromised, they could be commandeered hosts that are compromised, and it's not the user that's doing it, but it's an uninvited guest that's doing it. Everybody understands that sometimes when somebody says on a screen, it's not me, I promise you, I wasn't clicking on that stuff. There are cases where that's true. You do believe that, don't you?
Yeah.
As a follow-up, once users are informed and corrective measures adopted, this is the last thing I want you to see here in the notes, and verified working, right? Assess upstream traffic in the connected environment. There's a direct correlation between huge amounts of upstream traffic by connected devices and hosts. Most internet service providers give you generous amounts of megabytes per second or even gigabytes per second of downstream download speed. But it's the upstream traffic that's the most telling. That's the stuff, that's the stuff that tends to indicate that's where you can kind of cinch down. That's the next layer, and that's a great segue into how we use our forensic tools best and which tools to select and how to operate with them efficiently. That's the whole focus of Module 2 and the second half of this course. So we're going to hit the pause button here, and I'm going to wish you well in your first attempt. You do need to be finished with your first attempt. We've mentioned before you have about 36, 48 hours. We will post the update to these lecture notes and this recording, and essentially, I'm going to go ahead and finish this segment here where I'm asking, what can you do to scan the entire UVI network? So be sure you have the latest version of the resources. We'll review the items that pose the greatest challenge for students at the start of class on Wednesday. Please submit any assignments or solutions you have yet to submit. There's still a couple of you out there that are still working that up. Now is the time, and we'll see you Wednesday. Thanks for joining us.